They don't say it out loud, but you can feel it in their questions. So, still living alone? That's brave. I could never. You're so pretty and smart, how come no one has... But what if that reading is completely wrong? What if the woman who lives alone is not proof of failure, but proof that a different kind of life is possible, one where she is no longer willing to betray herself just to be chosen? And what if the fact that you are alone, or feel alone even in a relationship, is not a diagnosis of being unlovable, but a sign that something in you refuses to live? In this video, we're going to look at why your life is not evidence that you're broken, but a phase in a deeper process of becoming more yourself. We will walk through your fears, your history, your loneliness, and your strength, and by the end, if some part of this story touches you, I want you to see that. Chapter 1, Naming the Quiet Fear. You unlock the door and step into your place. The light comes on, the room is exactly as you left it. No shoes in the hallway that aren't yours, no voices overlapping in the kitchen, no, hey, you're home, drifting from another room. The air feels untouched, waiting only for you. You drop your keys in the same bowl, open the fridge, take out food for one. Maybe you eat standing at the counter, maybe you sit on the couch with a plate and a screen. You put on a podcast, a show, some music, not because you're bored, but because the silence sometimes feels like it is looking back at you, asking questions you don't want to hear. In the morning, you drink coffee by yourself. The mug is warm in your hands, the phone is cool in your palm. You scroll past engagement photos and baby announcements, couples renovating their homes, families around crowded tables. You don't hate them. You're not against love or children or shared houses. But under the surface, something whispers, everyone else is building a life together. Why am I still waking up alone? Sometimes, it's not even about living alone. You can lie next to someone every night and still feel as if you live on a different planet, your body not alone, but your inner world untouched and unseen. You talk about schedules and groceries, but not about the ache in your chest. You share a bed, yet feel like strangers orbiting the same room in different galaxies. At night, when the lamp goes off and the room goes soft and dark, that quiet whisper can turn into a chorus. Maybe I waited too long. Maybe I am too intense, too independent. Maybe I should have stayed with someone who wasn't right, because at least I wouldn't be alone now. The cruelest thought is the simplest, this must mean something is wrong with me. Most people around you don't see this inner dialogue. They see a woman who travels, who works, who decorates her space, who has her life together. They might even envy your freedom and your quiet. But you know there are nights when your perfectly made bed feels less like comfort and more like a question, a silent mirror reflecting back all your doubts. Here is the first shift we are going to make together. Your current solitude is not a cosmic report card stamped fail. It is a threshold, a place where old ways of relating no longer fit and new ways haven't fully arrived yet. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung used the word individuation for this kind of threshold, the slow process of becoming who you truly are instead of who you were trained to be. You may not have chosen every detail of your situation. Pain and loss may have pushed you here. But the fact that you are alone, or feel alone, does not automatically mean you lost. Sometimes it means you stopped playing a game that was quietly killing your soul. You stepped out of a script that demanded your self-betrayal as the price of belonging. Chapter 2, Attachment and Old Blueprints. To understand why this phase feels so raw, we have to look back to the first place where you learned what together even means. The British psychiatrist John Bowlby, who created attachment theory, noticed something simple and powerful: we build our idea of love long before we ever date anyone. If, when you cried as a child, someone usually noticed, picked you up, held you close, your body recorded a wordless truth: when I reach out, someone comes. I am not too much. There is space for me. Those early, ordinary moments taught your nervous system that connection is a place where you can exist as you are, not a test you must constantly pass. If, when you needed comfort, you met sharp words, tired sighs, a parent lost in their own pain, or a caregiver who was there in body but not in heart, a different belief settled into your nervous system. To stay connected, I must adjust. I must be easy, helpful, entertaining, quiet. If I show too much need, I might be left. You learn to edit yourself to keep love close. Bowlby called these hidden beliefs internal working models, blueprints for how relationships work. We rarely know we have them, we just live them. So when you grew up, maybe you became the woman who always understands, always forgives, always holds everyone else together. Or the woman who attaches quickly and panics at the first sign of distance. You might also have become the woman who keeps a careful space, never letting anyone all the way in because being left again feels unbearable. On the outside, you look strong, self-sufficient. On the inside, your body still carries the memory of reaching out and not finding anyone truly there. That memory whispers under every new connection you try to build. Now imagine what happens when this woman finds herself living alone, or feeling emotionally alone with someone beside her. Her old blueprint says, being alone means you failed at being lovable enough to keep. Her body interprets the empty side of the bed, or the emotionally empty conversations, as confirmation of her worst fear. You see? You are the one people don't stay for. At the same time, another quiet part of her notices something new. There are no footsteps slamming away from her tonight, no one yelling, no one giving her the silent treatment, no one asking her to shrink to keep the peace. There is pain and longing, yes, but there is also an absence of a certain chaos she once thought was normal, almost necessary. Modern research has shown that social pain activates many of the same brain areas as physical pain. So when you feel that sharp ache of being left, or not chosen, or ghosted, your body is not being dramatic, it is hurting in a very literal way. Living alone does not magically erase that pain. Some nights it even seems to magnify it, as if the walls echo back your hurt. But there is a quiet rewriting happening underneath. Every evening you face without running back to someone who treated you like an option, every weekend you navigate without collapsing into any relationship is better than none, your nervous system learns something Bowlby would recognize: I can be without a partner and still exist. I can feel lonely and not disappear. You begin to discover that you can be with yourself and not be destroyed. The blueprint that once equated alone with abandoned slowly gains a new line. Sometimes I am alone because I chose not to stay where I was unseen. You are not broken. You are updating an ancient blueprint that never truly fit you in the first place. Chapter 3: Jung, Shadow and Individuation. Carl Jung believed that deep inside each person there is a self, a whole, centered version of you that knows who you are and what you need. Most of us, however, spend years living as masks. We follow roles: the good girl, the partner, the caregiver, the cool one who never makes a fuss. Individuation, in Jung's language, is the process of moving from the mask to the self. It is rarely glamorous. It is often triggered by crisis, loss, or a life that no longer fits. Solitude is one of the main doors to this process. When you live alone, or when you feel alone inside a life that looks full, there is less distraction from your own truth. No one else's moods to manage every evening. No constant noise to hide in. No daily arguments to convince you that this drama is what love is supposed to feel like. Instead, there is you. Your thoughts. Your memories. The stories you have been repeating about yourself for years. In that quiet, you begin to hear things you ignored before. This is where the shadow walks in. Jung used the word shadow for the parts of yourself you learn to hide: the clingy girl, the angry girl, the jealous one, the needy one, the part that wants to be chosen so badly she is willing to accept almost anything. In relationships, it's easy to project these parts onto others and pretend they are not yours. They are too needy. They are the one with issues. Solitude takes away that mirror. On a quiet night, you might find yourself replaying an old relationship on the couch, seeing for the first time how often you said yes when you meant no, how you laughed off what actually hurt, how you called bare minimum love because you were terrified of being alone. It is not a pleasant movie to watch. It can feel like going down into a basement you have avoided for years. You may feel shame, anger, grief for the versions of you who didn't know better. But Jung would say this descent is necessary. You cannot become whole by only looking at the parts of yourself that are easy to love or easy to explain. In that basement, you also find something else. You see how strong you had to be to survive what you went through, how early you started carrying other people's emotions, how hard you tried to be good enough for people who were not ready to truly see you. Bit by bit, solitude becomes not just emptiness, but a mirror that shows both your wounds and your courage. You begin to understand yourself not as a broken puzzle, but as a story in progress. This is individuation at work, not a spiritual slogan but a lived, quiet reorientation, away from, who do I need to be so they don't leave, and toward, who am I really, when no one is watching. Your aloneness becomes a workshop where your true shape slowly appears. Chapter 4, Emotional Sovereignty, Not Coldness. From the outside, people might say you are too independent now. They see that you don't chase messages, you don't stay with someone who sends mixed signals for months, you don't rearrange your entire life for the chance of maybe being chosen. They read your boundaries as walls built out of pride. They might say, you've built your walls too high, or, if you keep this up, you'll end up alone forever. They don't see the nights you lie awake wondering if they are right. They don't see the tears that still come, not because you regret leaving, but because you are grieving the version of you who thought she had to accept so little to be loved. What is actually growing in you is not ice. It is sovereignty. Emotional sovereignty is quiet. It looks like reading a text full of excuses and feeling your body go heavy instead of excited. It looks like noticing that familiar anxiety in your chest when someone is hot and cold with you, and this time, choosing not to call it chemistry or destiny. It does not mean you no longer need anyone. It means you stop treating anyone as your only chance. You still get lonely. You still miss touch, shared mornings, someone on the other side of the couch. Sovereignty does not remove longing, it changes what you are willing to trade for relief. Your standards shift from someone to someone who can meet me. You start to realize that going back to relationships where you disappear costs more than an empty evening ever will. So you say no more often. You leave conversations that feel like auditions. You allow yourself to wait for connections that don't require you to amputate parts of your soul. This does not make you superior, it makes you devoted to your own heart. Chapter 5, The Discomfort You Stir in Others. A woman who lives alone and does not treat herself as a failure can create a certain unease in the room. Some men, especially those who feel safer when a woman doubts herself, may not know what to do with you. You are polite, maybe even warm, but you are not impressed by crumbs of attention. You don't glow just because someone texts you at midnight. They might label you difficult, high maintenance, hard to please, when in reality you are simply no longer willing to pay for closeness with self-abandonment. Your refusal to beg for half-love unsettles those who are used to women bargaining against themselves to stay. Some women may also feel a subtle tension around you. Not because you're judging them, but because your life raises questions they were taught never to ask. If you are alone and not collapsing, if you can admit your loneliness without turning it into a shame story, then perhaps being partnered is not the only way to be okay. That thought can be unsettling and freeing. The truth is, most of us, partnered or single, were raised inside the same script: a woman's worth is proven by being chosen and kept. Jung would call this a piece of the collective shadow, the shared, unspoken belief that shapes our lives from underneath. Your existence outside that script doesn't expose anyone as wrong, it simply makes an invisible rule visible. It brings buried fears up to the surface. What would I feel if I lost my relationship? Who am I without this role? Have I ever really chosen myself? You are not a symbol. You are not a warning sign or a banner of rebellion. You are a human being living one particular version of a female life, carrying her own mix of pain, courage and contradiction. If your choices make others uncomfortable, it is not because you are attacking them. It is because your path quietly reminds us that there are more possibilities than the ones we were handed, and that realization can be painful and liberating at the same time. You become a mirror, not of perfection, but of the fact that womanhood can look many different ways. Chapter 6, Loneliness versus Wholeness. Let's not pretend, there is real, heavy loneliness in this story. There are evenings when your chest feels hollow, when you would give anything for the sound of someone cooking in the kitchen, for a voice saying, "Come here, tell me about your day." On those nights, the quiet can feel less like a sanctuary and more like a wall. There are holidays where you feel like a guest in other people's lives, weekends where the quiet feels too big for one heart to hold. You can feel this sitting by yourself in a small apartment, and you can feel it just as sharply sitting opposite someone at dinner who has stopped really seeing you. Being partnered does not automatically erase this particular kind of loneliness. Individuation and attachment theory don't cancel that out. Bowlby would not say, "Just learn to love yourself, and you'll never need anyone." He would recognize that your nervous system is still wired for connection and that it is natural to hurt when that need is not met. Jung would not say, "True spiritual women rise above loneliness." He would see your longing as deeply human. So where is the difference between being destroyed by loneliness and being shaped by it? Slowly, you learn to stay with yourself in those difficult moments. Instead of collapsing into, "I'm alone, so I must be worthless," you begin to think, "I'm alone, and that hurts, but it doesn't define my value." The feeling remains, but the story around it begins to soften. Instead of running to the first available distraction, you let some of the feelings pass through you. You write. You cry. You sit by the window. You call someone who sees you, not someone who will just fill the silence with noise. You begin to treat your loneliness not as a verdict, but as a message about what kind of connection your soul is actually hungry for. You stop telling yourself the story that everyone else is winning and you are losing. You begin to see your life not as a late, broken version of theirs, but as a different path with its own timing. You are still lonely sometimes. You still wish for a partner, for a family, for a hand reaching back in the dark. But your loneliness slowly shifts from proof of failure to a signal. That signal says, "I am ready for connection that matches who I have become. I am unwilling to shrink back into who I was just to avoid another quiet night." That is not wholeness as perfection. That is wholeness as honesty, the kind that allows you to feel the ache without making it your identity, to want more without calling yourself less. Chapter 7, What changes when you choose yourself? When you truly begin to choose yourself, your external life doesn't suddenly turn into a movie trailer. Most of the changes are small and subtle, but they add up. You notice you have less tolerance for conversations that leave you feeling empty, less interest in playing therapist to people who never ask how you are. You still listen, still care, but you don't spend hours absorbing other people's drama just to avoid your own thoughts. You find yourself drawn to those rare people with whom you can say, "I feel lonely," without hearing, "Well, you just need to put yourself out there more." You begin to recognize the difference between being heard and being managed. Your dating life shifts. You might go on fewer dates, but you recover faster from the ones that don't become anything. You no longer twist yourself into shapes to make something work that clearly doesn't. You start to trust that saying no to what is wrong for you is not closing the door on love, it is clearing space for something less distorted. You begin to build a home that is truly yours, not a waiting room for someone else's arrival, but a place where you can actually breathe. You buy the sheets you like, you cook the food you crave, you put art on the walls for your own eyes. Your space stops feeling like an empty stage and starts feeling like a sanctuary built for a real person, you. One ordinary day, you catch your reflection in the microwave door, in a window, in your phone screen. And instead of seeing the woman who ended up alone, you see a person in the middle of her own life. Not a placeholder. Not a backup plan. Not a side character in other people's stories. You see someone who exists in her own right, even without an audience. You still have questions. You still have grief for the lives you will not live. You still have hope for the love you haven't met yet. But you also have something you might not have had before, a growing sense that you can trust yourself not to abandon yourself again. You know that even if love comes, you do not have to disappear inside it. Jung might say you have taken more steps toward yourself, moving from mask to essence. Bowlby might recognize that you are slowly becoming a secure base for yourself, someone you can come home to, even when no one else is there. Your life may still look simple from the outside, but inside, the structure has changed in ways that really matter. Chapter 8, The Woman Who Lives Alone Is Not Broken. So let's return to the old, tired verdict: a woman who lives alone must be lonely, broken, unlovable. Yes, there is loneliness. Yes, some nights are hard and some questions still sting. But broken? No. You are not a shattered version of the right woman. You are a different expression of a human life. You are a woman standing in a doorway between inherited blueprints and chosen truth. You are someone whose nervous system is learning that safety can exist even when there is only one toothbrush in the bathroom. You are someone whose soul refuses to sell itself for half-love just to be able to say, "I'm not alone." That refusal is not arrogance, it is self-respect. Carl Jung would see a person walking the path of individuation, less mask, more essence. John Bowlby would see a person revising the earliest lessons about love through new, lived experiences. You are not behind. You are not too much or not enough. You are in the middle of becoming, and becoming is rarely tidy, glamorous, or easily understood from the outside. If you recognized yourself in these words, let this be your reminder: your life is not a mistake. Your solitude is not a sentence. On the days when your apartment feels too quiet, when your strength feels overrated, when the questions get loud, you can return to this space and remember that there are other women in other rooms feeling the same ache. They are asking the same questions, choosing the same difficult honesty, wondering if they are the only ones. You are not. If you know someone who lives alone and secretly wonders if it's because she is unlovable, you can share this with her as a quiet sign: you are not broken. You are not alone in this. You are changing the story you were given. And if you want a place where loneliness is not mocked or minimized but carefully understood, you are welcome to stay here, to listen, to breathe, to remember again and again: the woman who lives alone is not broken. She is practicing a fierce, imperfect, deeply human kind of love, the kind that begins with herself and slowly changes everything else.